All right, everybody. Thank you for coming on to hang out with Dave and I. Those of you who don't know, Dave runs From Military to Millionaire, lovingly in our office. We just refer to him as Mustache, which I think is a Marine he's proud of. So I'm allowed to throw that out. We're live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and I think that's all of them. So if you're on Instagram, we can't see your questions come through on the live. So if you want us to be able to answer your questions as they're coming in, you've got to hit us up via YouTube or Facebook for us to be able to throw those on. So if you guys haven't seen it, Dave and I did a YouTube video where we walked through a campaign he did. It was about $4,000 you spent, I believe.
Yeah.
And off of that, you pulled in $40,000 in profit. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think that's completely net other than taxes.
Okay. So that's like net. So 10x return on the ad spend, which is really pretty stout. I don't have any complaints about that. I don't imagine you will. If you're watching this and you've never done direct to seller marketing, I'm not going to tell you that is common or guaranteed. My typical average is I'm spending like $2,500 to $3,000 to get an off-market property. And off of that, my average profit is anywhere from like 10 to 15. But I didn't always start there. So Dave, for anybody who missed that video, do you mind just kind of quickly recapping those deals that generated the $40,000 in liquidity?
Yeah. So it was 3 different wholesales, and I hope I'm not echoing since I came through. I had to mute my phone for the Instagram live part. Yeah. So it's 3 different deals that were all wholesales. One of them I bought for, trying to make sure I get all this right. One I bought for 28 and sold for 45. One I bought for 13 and sold for 30. And one I bought for, I want to say 12 and sold for 35. Some of those had some clean out. So I found a junk removal guy who was like 2,200, got like a shed removed and the entire house gutted. And then another property, I think I had to do the same thing, only it was a smaller gut, no shed. So a little bit of expenditures in there, and then basically just listed them on the market as just because the market right now is kind of crazy. So I've done a wholesaler too. For me personally, I kind of prefer the wholesale, even if the market's not as crazy as it is right now, because I don't know. To me, it seems way easier for me and way less stressful for me to just plan like I'm going to close that house and then I'm going to clean it and list it, rather than like scream around trying to find a buyer and like the pressure. And also some buyers just do not like that at all. So it's so much easier to just be like, yeah, I'm going to buy your house.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, we wholesale quite a bit, but I'm right there with you in that I definitely prefer when we're closing it, turning around and listing it, even if we're not doing anything to it. Yes, we're taking on more risk, but it feels a little bit less like juggling and kind of hoping the pieces connect in air and land where we want them to. So you did, was it 4 wholesales?
Yeah, so it was 3 wholesales, 1 wholesale.
Okay.
And one of those wholesales I didn't actually, I basically broke even on because I bought wrong price, listed wrong price. And I realized halfway through, but I'm not going to not close a property. So that was totally on me. I closed it, and my private money lender made more money than I did. But you know what? Good for relationships.
I've had a few of those. My first flip I ever did, in order to sell it, I had to bring $7,500 to closing. And this was like, Ryan back then did not have $7,500. So this was like, oh my God. This was the, for anybody who's seen like the meme of, I think it's like the overnight fiance, they're like, I'm never financially going to recover from this. That was me in that moment of like, well, my career's over. My life is done. So walk people through that missed that episode, like $4,000. What did that entail? What did you spend on marketing? What services were used? Like, my goal with this is that it's not like a sales pitch, because obviously some of this is my company's. But my goal is that somebody who's watching this can copy what you did and kind of put that blueprint into practice and get their own results.
Yeah. So I want to say it was probably about 3,700 mailers. So it was probably right around $3,500, $3,700 worth of, it might be skewing my numbers on that without going into all my data, but I think it was like 3,500, 3,700 in mailers. And then the biggest piece for me is RE Simply, which I know you use as well. That CRM is a lifesaver for me. And then I have them call in through Call Porter, which is absolutely necessary for me because, well, you know, we've talked about it before. For those of you who don't know, and I hope that when you visualize this, it's like the coolest space in the world and not where I actually work, but I work in like an old skiff or a vault with no windows, no cell phones allowed in the building. No, I mean, literally, I might check the phone once between showing up at work and lunch and once between lunch and going home. And other than that, I have like a 45-minute to an hour lunch break where I try to sit in my car and call sellers and maybe read a book, which I usually don't get to because of everything else. And so for me, there's no way without hiring that I would be able to field phone calls inbound. And I also personally just hate unscheduled phone calls coming into my life. It's such a huge productivity killer for me. If I'm in the middle of something, the phone rings and I have to answer it, just crushes everything. And so for me, Call Porter was a godsend. I would not be able to do any of this without Call Porter taking said phone calls for me. And basically they screen out the applicants. And then I either get a notification in RE Simply that I have a new lead that I can kind of text back and forth with, or just set on an automatic follow-up, like a drip campaign. Or if they were qualified and interested, Call Porter will schedule them on my Calendly link for that 12 to 12:30 slot, which I have Monday through Friday, and I have a 4-hour block Saturday. And so sometimes I get home and I just have a block scheduled for the next day with a seller, and I'm like, oh, cool, I have a seller call tomorrow. And then I just make sure I'm on the phone call. I mean, from then it's just basic rapport and sales stuff. And then I have RE Simply for follow-ups. And what I've done, because I don't live in the state that I do any of this, is I've built a relationship with a real estate agent who will go and walk properties for me, with the understanding that if I do wholesale, he's the lister. And if I don't buy it, but it seems like it would work for him, I'll then try to nudge them towards him as a listing agent. And so it's a win-win. He's made, actually one of the guys on their team bought one of the properties that I wasn't able to make work, just bought it himself. And then they've also listed one or two, and then he's obviously sold all 3 of those wholesales for me. And I think he made more money on the one that I just sold yesterday as well. But the other ones, you know, all made
everybody eats. But
yeah, everybody made more money than I did. But you know what? It's good against it'll help me out with the taxes on the other ones, I guess. So
Rory says, great job on the marketing. Did you touch on what lists those were that you hit?
So the first list was essentially just absentee homeowners, 70% equity. That was it. And then I think the second list, which actually none of these deals have come from, because I haven't even finished sending the second set of mailers out, because I basically stopped sending them when the deal we started talking about, we're about to talk about, when this thing came down, I was like, I need to focus a little bit. I'm gonna just let these sit here for a little bit and focus on this one thing. So those are going out again tomorrow. Will be the first drop again of those. Those are just same absentee homeowner, 70% equity, but in smaller suburb towns,
kind of like suburb cities. So for anybody who's watching this, like, I want to give you the playbook here. The folks I work with inside my mastermind group, CCF, did over 500 deals last year. A lot of those came from simply doing an absentee owner list with equity, sending them ballpoint pieces, having Call Porter take the calls, and then going into Resimply. I've had a lot of you guys beg me. I've even had a few of you guys hit up Dave, and Dave's been like, how do you want me to handle this? Of people that are like, what is it that they do? There's more than that we do. But if a lot of you guys that are watching this would simply take those steps and hit that, you would have the results Dave's talking about here. Like, that's kind of the litmus test that we start most people off of like, let's see how this goes. Let's kind of see how your market works. Daniel asked, what's the difference between a wholesale and wholesales? Great question. So a wholesale deal is you're not actually closing on it. So it would be like if I negotiated to buy a house from Dave and got it at, say, $100,000. And I knew somebody who wanted to be in that neighborhood. So I went and negotiated with them to buy it for 120. I send everything to a title company, and that's the like typical wholesale. I'm never buying the house. I'm making $20,000. They get the house. Dave sells his house. A wholesale is a little bit different in that you're taking that property down, you're closing on it with either cash, private money, or hard money. And you're doing like maybe a clean out. We've done several of these where it's like a very light flip. Like I might throw a roof on it or fix a couple other like concerns, but I'm not retailing this thing. If you guys follow me on Instagram, go look at the last flip I posted that I did. This thing was ugly. Like the carpet's gray. The walls are 14 different colors. And somebody who's looking at that is going to be like, oh my gosh, Ryan has no sense of style. I don't. Spoiler alert. But on that deal, we're set to make $75,000 to $80,000. I bought it, did like $10,000 to $15,000 worth of work, turned around and listed it. So a wholesale is you're basically taking that off-market opportunity, you're cleaning it out, and you're getting it on the market for like the most exposure. If all you guys are doing is wholesaling and you start to wholesale some properties, you will make a lot more money. I'm telling you, particularly if it's stuff that's like outdated, but still livable. So if it like could work for an owner occupant, you might consider taking that property down and listing it as is and seeing if you can't sell it for a premium. So I think the reason that everybody's here hanging out with us, they're like, okay, it's cool that you made $40,000 off of $4,000. I think there's a lot of people watching this call that have $4,000. They'd love to turn it into 40,000. But I think a lot more people are like, okay, you made $40,000 and you bought 79 units, like 7, 9. And these aren't like, this isn't like you got 79 lots. Like this is 79 doors. So why don't you walk us through like what these were? Because I think it's a couple different buildings and who they came from, how you found them, and kind of what that process looked like. Because I think it's more difficult than a lot of people think when they start out in direct to seller marketing.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for automation, because this never would have happened if it wasn't for that, and I'll explain that in a minute. So Ryan, we jumped on a phone call a little bit earlier just to chat about this, and as we did, he asked me a question or two. I was like, actually, I haven't gone back and looked at the lead in the last month or two. Let me go back and make sure I can talk through exactly what happened. So I'll give the quick oversight on this. I was mailing still absentee owner single families. Now, there's a chance I had sent like 50. No, I think I was only able to pull addresses for like 25 0 to 25 unit apartments. So I thought for a little bit that I had actually mailed one of these apartments, and then I realized that I never mailed this city that's in this suburb. So it would have had to have been, I tried to find the list this guy was on, but I couldn't in the last little bit. I haven't been able to, but it was the single family house in this little suburb that I did mail. And I can hear it on his call where he's like, yeah, I got a mailer about this house. And so Ari simply shows that this guy called on January 18th, which means that he got the letter from my first batch, because I didn't order the second batch until February something. And he called in, and the note here says has several properties, hotel, Springfield area, Saddlebrook, Missouri. If you're looking, if you'd like to meet him for coffee, give him a call, interested to sit down and talk to you. And I basically shot him a text on the system that was like, hey, interested in meeting you for coffee to discuss properties. However, I'm not going to be back in town for a few months, so I'd love to just jump on a phone call with you. And then I didn't hear anything out from him. And so I was like, all right. And I dropped him on this campaign that I have, People Who Ghosted Me is the title. And so then he got a message on February 5th.
Real quick, because I think people might not know what that means. So one of the things Resimply allows you to do is trigger out like a pre-programmed list of text messages that you can have automatically cycle out to like work your leads for you. I call them like automatic, we abbreviate them to FU sequences, which I've had to explain to some people like means follow-up. But you're able to trigger like automatic follow-up sequences that will kind of run in the background. That way you're not having to remember or check on a calendar of like, hey, did I send that text? For anybody who's watching this, like, do you mind sharing what a couple of those messages were? And then maybe the ones that like he responded to?
Yeah. So, and I could totally understand why someone would think FU texts meant what they usually respond when you put them on this, but I've gotten several angry people about these follow-ups, but I've also now landed this one and got someone visiting a house tomorrow to see about buying another one from 6 months ago. So they work. So the first one, February 5th, just says, hey, Tom, haven't heard back from you in a little bit. Were you still interested in getting your cash offer? Thanks. And then on the 7th, so 2 days later, it says, Tom, still waiting to hear back from you about the house and and it would have the address there, except he didn't tell anyone the address when he called in the first time. Are you ready to sell it, or did something change? And then he said, hey, forgive me for not getting back. I just don't think you probably have the cash I'm looking for. I'm not hurting, but if you're willing to give an honest try, then I'm willing to talk. Like, okay, sounds good to me. When would be a good time to jump on a short call? And then he didn't answer. 3 days later, I said, morning, Tom. Hope you're doing well. Just want to touch base and see if you still had interest in selling your property. And that was actually another one of the automated messages. And then on the 11th, he responded, yes, but I'd really like to meet you in person. I have several properties. I'm ready to retire. Easy to work with, and I'll guarantee you 10% cap rates and higher. They're turnkey. Give me a call tomorrow. And then
my knees just got a little weak. I would love to get a text like that. I'm easy to work with. I'll guarantee you a 10% cap rate. The thing that I love, though, is like the stars didn't really align on this. Like, he wanted to meet you, and you had to honestly be like, I'm not going to be in town for months, which if I'm this guy, I'm like, this is a scam. And then like there was some back and forth before you guys even got on the phone, which I love, because a lot of people will be like, okay, this person called into Call Porter or called me. I didn't get them on the phone. They left me a voicemail, whatever. I called them back. They didn't answer it. They're not interested, and they move on. And it's like, there's all of the money, the fortune is all in that follow-up, is in like chasing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think then we basically, there's more dialogue here, but he didn't answer my phone call. So I was like, oops, forgot to mention I'll be calling from a 501 area code. And then it was 3 days later that I sent him, he got hit with the next automated because he didn't respond to my text. Then anyway, so then we were eventually able to jump on a phone call. And then I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, he and I talked on the phone. I would say 8 hours is probably an underestimate. This guy I don't want to say talkative like it's a bad thing. He's a very personable person, and we had very long conversations with lots of stories. Your typical, Southern gentleman he's got a story about all kinds of things, and good conversations. And then meanwhile, this trying to structure things, trying to work stuff out. And finally, I just told the guy, look, I'm very interested. I've got a 10 unit that I'm selling, so I'm going to have a decent chunk of capital. I know I can take at least half of this down on my own. Before we move forward, can I get my team out there? And so I sent my property manager, my real estate agent, and a buddy of mine, Hugh, who owns a hotel, sent his partner on that first hotel. So I guess I should probably preface, this is a 40-unit hotel, a 15-unit apartment. 15-unit apartment, 23-unit apartment. And then the last one is the single family that we mailed, which at the end of all this, I've never even seen the single family. And he was like, do you guys even want this one? I'm like, yeah, sure. Throw it in, because we're buying it.
Might as well.
Yeah. So we haven't seen it. We don't know anything about that single family, but the numbers on everything else were great enough that we were like, yeah, you want out of this town, we got you. And so they went and walked it. And my property manager called me and had nothing but good things to say about all the properties. And the guy who is partners on the hotel with my friend Hugh basically just texted and was like, I want in on this deal if you buy it. And anyway, so
that always makes you feel good. Like when the local, I've got an Airbnb that I close on the 20th, next Tuesday. And it's like an hour from my house. It's in Fort Walton Beach, like pretty good area. But I was like, I don't really know. And I talked to a realtor, and he was like, you didn't get that for that. Like, good friend of mine. And I'm like, no, I did. And he's like, if you don't buy that, I'll buy it. And I was like, all right, I'm good to move forward. Like, that makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's an absolute warm and fuzzy, especially because I don't know the first thing about running a hotel.
I was going to say, do you have experience in hotels?
I've slept in them a few times. I mean, I don't think that counts. So
what does the structure look like on these? Because I think a lot of people that are watching this are like, oh my gosh, Dave is a Marine, must just make bajillions of dollars, and is just, buying the Paray Hotel Inn and Suites in cash. Like, walk people through how you guys took control of this thing, because I think it really shows where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. So he was willing to sell or carry some of it. So I guess I should back up to the story of this hotel. So this gentleman's making good money on this hotel quickly, and we'll kind of come into terms with all that. But essentially, the hotel went under like a year and a half ago. Not COVID related, but prior to that, drug related, probably is a good way to say it. So when he took over the hotel, he
Like
likes to tell the story that
problems at the hotel. Okay.
somebody called in and asked if they still took 2 hits of heroin for a free night stay, like after he took over. Yeah. So the hotel is a pretty nice building, but apparently what happened is the owner lived like 3 hours away, and the brother sister that were managing it were, I mean, essentially druggies, and they just let all their friends stay at the hotel while they ran it into the ground for free meth or whatever people do out there.
Do you still give free nights for 2 hits of heroin or no?
Asking for a friend. I don't think so. So he took it over from the bank. He bought it REO from the bank for I think like 452. He bought it for nothing. This is a 40-unit hotel. And so he bought it for nothing. And then he went and remodeled a bunch of the doors. By the time we took ownership, he had remodeled 34 of the 40 units. And the only reason he hadn't gotten to the last few was because he couldn't get the final pieces of furniture from Europe for him to. He did a very high-end renovation. This is a small town. And so it's a 40-unit building with a indoor pool, indoor hot tub.
And European furniture?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think some of the furniture probably could have been built very locally, and it's not like fancy European. It's just good quality wood and good quality stuff. Probably could make replicas here, no problem. But it does look nice. Like the rooms are, I would say, over renovated for what that market needs. By any
what are they getting a night?
They are listed for $89.99 a night.
Okay.
Sometimes they get that. Currently, we have it full, and a lot of it is like Venezuelan farmers that are working on, I want to say, a dispensary, and so we're doing 58 a night weekly stays for just to make sure it's full.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. I think 89 is realistic once we get. I mean, basically, he was trying to turn it around. His first profitable month was the month that was March, and we took over last week. So we basically got in right after he was profitable. And trying to put this in perspective, last month in March, he had 360 walk-in bookings and like 45 online bookings. And for the hotel industry, apparently it's normally 20% walk-ins and like 80, 90% online. So they just didn't have an online presence. And so we've already crushed or on track to more than crush what they did last month. And they're just some small things that were going on. So we were able to get it for fairly cheap because the guy wants to retire. He took over the hotel. He was trying to turn it into assisted living facility. The city said no. He's like, I don't want to manage this thing. I don't want a hotel. If you guys give me some profit and buy everything else, I can move to Florida. I can retire. I'm a happy man. And so what we ended up doing for structure, and I tried to go back and forth to where I would be able to buy it on my own with like 100, 150 down. But he was able to carry on the asset I didn't need him to carry on and not able to carry on the asset I would have needed to carry on. So what we ended up doing is through him seller carrying, because of when he bought it, he can't sell the hotel until September 4th for short-term capital gains. And so we did a lease option. We gave him $100K, said, great, we'll take control of it now. Like literally on Friday, he's like, you guys want the hotel Monday? And we were like, sure. And so Monday morning signed a lease option, took control with a contingency, said, hey, two weeks that this is completely refundable. We're going to do inspection and everything. If we come up with anything crazy, we'll just, we'll get our money back and walk. So far, nothing. And then we have to close between September and December 31st. We're going to do a SBA loan, 10% down. And then the rest of it, the other 39 doors, is 15% down through a local bank. And we're getting 30-year AM, no balloon, floating rate, but 6.8 cap, 6.8 ceiling on the rate. So no balloon on a 30-year loan I'm good with. And we bought the apartments one at an 11.6 cap and one at a, or 11.8 cap and one at a 10.6 cap. And so they're both solid buildings, which is pretty funny because we're all like, never been so unexcited about a great deal because we're all focused on the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're first. And we already have control of the hotel. It's already doing better than it was. And to kind of, I don't want to like keep trying to keep myself modest about what this thing could do because I don't want to like overhype myself. But if we ran zero vacancy at $50 a night, it'd pull in 720 gross this year, and we're bought it for
Wow.
950. So even if it has a 30-40% vacancy rate at 89, I mean, we only need to make, I think we did the math, 23,000 a month is break even right now, and it's going to do 40 this month, if not more. So,
Yeah.
you know, good start. We'll see what happens with it, but.
So as a regular peon that doesn't own hotels, what does the staff look like on a 40 unit building? I'm curious, like your 23,000 break even, what's, staff, maintenance, cleaning? Like I imagine there's some overhead there.
Yeah. And I should probably have much more hard concrete numbers for you. One of the brilliant things about how I partnered this 3 ways with Hugh was, so Hugh, the guy who owned the other hotel, we were like, all right, you want in? You got $100,000, you're in. And part of that was that Hugh basically sat me down and said, I don't want you involved in anything. I'll operate everything. Just stay out of my way. I'm like,
oh, you poor
great
thing. So
like, perfect.
he brings the money and does the work. That's my kind of partnership.
Yeah. So I was planning to try to hold a little bit more equity because I found it, negotiated it, and all that stuff. And then he was like, I want to operate everything. It's like, yeah, 33% sounds good to me. So what we're doing is we're going to do 33% split, but we're going to give the 7% that normally goes to property management to his team for taking over everything and training and operating and whatever. So it won't go to him, but it'll go to the team that he runs for his other hotel. And then the 33% will get split out from under that. We had 6 employees when we bought it. The seller took 1 with him. And so we've got 5 at the moment. I think we only need 4 to run it because it's not 24 hours. And we're looking at whether or not it's going to be worth hiring an extra 1 or 2 to make it 24 hours, which I think is technically the distinguisher between motel and hotel. Whatever.
Is if you're 24 hours?
Yeah, I think it's something like if there's a desk 24. I don't know. I could never tell you. I always just assumed motel meant crappy and
meant you might die, and hotel meant you probably won't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're looking at I want to say over the course of the year right now, we've got, trying to think, on the 5 employees, I think it's 2 maintenance guys, which are much more part-time, and then 3 that are sitting at around 40, 45. And then there's not a whole lot of other expenditures. Like the HVAC is geothermal, run through a lake in the back. So it's super, super, super cheap. And then the guy had already converted the pool and hot tub to saltwater. So that's much more affordable, and just a lot of things like that. My buddy's basically running, he's a lean Six Sigma nutso. I don't want to say nut job, but I think nut job's kind of the right word because people don't think that way, where he basically specializes in leaning out systems and cutting expense and waste from processes. And so, we're kind of just letting him run. We are going to hire 1 or 2 more full-time. And I think the end goal is to have 4 or 5 really well paid employees as opposed to 6 or 7 mediocre paid employees. Yeah.
No, we've done that inside of some of our companies. Like we've realized that the difference between a $10 an hour employee and a $12 or $15 an hour employee, or even like, I think especially in roles like maintenance, like you don't really want the guy that's like, can I trade you heroin for working on your boiler system? You want the person that's like, they come with their own tools and they know what they're doing and they're more like tradey. I have dogs for anybody who's wondering, and a kid. So there's probably been all kinds of fun background noise. So I've got a couple questions here that I want to throw up.
Yeah.
First one. So like rough dollar value of the 79 units. What are we talking about? Like gross?
So we bought at 2.325.
Okay.
And I hesitate to say what we think it could be. If we did an 8 cap, I think everything could be worth 7 within 2 years.
There's my YouTube thumbnail. Thank you.
I think probably at an 8 cap, probably 3.5 or 4 as is.
Very cool. Okay, so realistically, $4 million worth of new assets, $40,000 in new income, off $4,000. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, my partner and I were sitting in the hot tub the other night talking about the hotel, and I'm like, dude, I can't fathom what this thing might be able to do. So I just keep telling myself it's worse than that.
Yeah. Well, one thing we run in our business that I highly recommend people look at is like a lot of stuff is never as good as it seems. It's also never as bad as it seems. I think that helps you kind of like stay in your lane a little bit. We had a time once where a well-known website that I won't name, but you guys can all figure out, was like, hey, we're testing this new feature. We're going to ping 1 million members with the fact that Call Porter is doing a sale. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be lit. We got one client. And it was like, that was the most underwhelming experience I think I've had in business of just like, well, that I remember that day. I was like, today's the day I become rich. And then it was like nothing. One thing I love that you hit on early on was this guy came at you a little sassy, right? Of like, you probably don't have enough money anyway. You just want to buy this little house I've got. And I have watched investors that I know and work with blow deals over their ego of like, you don't know who you're talking about. I've got money. And you were like, well, let's see. Like the thing I love for anybody watching this, like you didn't lie to get this deal. You didn't you were just super honest of like, I'm not going to be in town for months. So let's talk. Hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I have a California number. It was very like, it was not super smooth. And it also started in January and didn't actually like materialize into you guys taking possession of these properties until April. I think a lot of people think like I did a direct mail drop or I did some marketing and I didn't get anything. It's been 30 days. That was a waste. And we just had another guy in CCF share that his last 3 deals that he just closed this month all started in January. And it was 3 months of drip sequences, a little bit of a recurring theme here if you're paying attention, and follow up to get those across the finish line. We've got a couple of user submitted questions. Guys, if you're watching this and you have questions for Dave while we've got him, feel free to just throw your questions in the comments. Again, if you're hanging out with us on Instagram, we can only see these if you're hitting us up on Facebook or YouTube. So hit me up there because I'm sure you guys have questions that we're missing. One of the guys asked, how many letters do you suggest sending out as a first timer with Ballpoint? So I'll give my answer and then I'll let you give yours. I always tell people 2,500. In my experience, I did a campaign for a friend of mine that I won't name because I'm going to let him share it, but it was like 400 letters. And I was like, bro, I don't think you're going to get anything. Like this is a very small sample we're playing with. And he ended up getting a deal out of it. I was like, great. I'm like pumped for you. That's awesome. In my experience, you get to like that 2,000-3,000 mark and you've got really a pretty decent shot at getting a deal. And that's a property, 75% of what it's worth, minus repairs, minus holding costs. Like that's the average I've seen across the country. Now, if you're in Los Angeles, it's going to be harder. If you're in, Timbuktu, it's going to be easier. But I've seen those numbers hold true in markets that all of you guys complain about. I'm talking Nashville, I'm talking Seattle, I'm talking New York City, I'm talking Boston, like these places where people are like, there's nothing here. Now, that is an average though. So sometimes you might go 5,000 deep to get 2 or 3 deals. Like they don't come off the first batch. And then we've had guys like Drew Weird, who I did a Bigger Pockets podcast with, who was like, I got 6 deals on 2,000 letters. And I was like, great, everybody's going to want this now. So that's normally what I recommend. I feel like if you do less than that, it's just not consistent. It's kind of like maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but 3,000, 2,500 is enough to get you calls. What's your experience been, Dave?
I would like to just default to your answer because it's right. I did like, well, funny story. The first time I ever sent letters was 120 handwritten letters to this neighborhood, Lanikai, Hawaii, because I was stationed out there. And I was like, I really like Lanikai. Anyone listening to this who's familiar with Hawaii knows that I didn't get anything just by saying Lanikai. And to put in perspective, I didn't know what I was doing, but I know that Donald Rumsfeld's son called me about his $10 million home on the beach. And somebody else called me to ask if I was a front runner for President Obama buying his $20 million mansion. So those didn't work very well, but I've done a couple like 100, 200, 300 mailers. I think I've gotten one. sticks here, sticks there, sticks there. This was the first time I've ever sent more than 500 mailers at a time. And obviously, I'm much happier with the results off this than I am off the couple of other times I tried and said, maybe it's just not working for me.
I mean, if you weren't grateful, I would call you ungrateful. So I'm glad you're happy for it.
I don't know why I didn't get 90 units.
Yeah, so that's unacceptable. If any of you guys watching this drop 2,500 pieces of mail and don't make $40,000 and buy $4 million worth of real estate and come to complain to me, I'm just going to point you back to this video and you can go fight Dave. Somebody asked, are the letters more effective than the postcards? Great question. So I have way, way, way more experience with the letters. I've actually been doing those since 2016. Our like comic style postcards, we rolled out, I want to say end of last year, early this year. That being said, my cost per deal has looked the same. So we did, it was like 11 or 12,000 postcards to absentee owners who owned no more than 3 properties. We pulled that through PropStream and we got 6 deals out of that. So pretty solid, pretty stout, but $1 a postcard, cost per deal ended up being right about $2,000. I'll do that all day long. Like that makes perfect sense to me. One deal paid for that entire campaign. That being said, if you're watching this and you're like, I'm only going to try $3,000 worth of this stuff, I would always push you to the letters just because I have more data and more experience with them, but I'm getting deals with them. I've got guys I work with getting deals with them. We're getting really good feedback on them, but I'm just more comfortable with our letters because I've done them for like 10 times as long. But it's one of those, like, try it in your market. We've found like one of our cards, like the no realtor commissions card, works really well on expired listings because these people are salty that their realtor didn't sell their house, right? They're like greedy liars. And we're like, hey, you don't have to pay them. And they're like, okay, I'm interested. Now, one thing I want to highlight, just because we're talking direct to seller marketing, most people are not going to call you being like, let me sell you my house at a discount. You can just have it. Most of them are like, yeah, I got your card. What the hell do you want? Right. And you've got to like, well, my name's Ryan. Nice to meet you. Let me explain how this works. So, I think a lot of newbies have the misconception of like, I send out mail and deals come back in. And there's more work in that, which was part of why I wanted Dave to do this one with me. I was like, dude, it's baller that you got 79 units, but it's cooler that this wasn't a laydown, that there was some work here. All right, I'm going to just kind of rapid fire some of these questions at you, Dave, because we've got a few that I want to get through. Jorge Ronas says, as someone who has a full-time job in the Marine Corps, thanks for your service, man. If you're my wife, your reply is also, and thank you for your support. And also runs a business. How essential was call porter and ballpoint marketing in landing these recent deals? Go ahead, Dave. Make me feel good.
I mean, I wouldn't have done it without them. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. So Ari Simply, that's huge, right? That's phenomenal. Absolutely. I think no matter what, you should use that, no matter what your status is or job is. Unless you have the propensity to answer every phone call that comes in and you like taking unsolicited, unannounced phone calls and you like talking to people on the phone when you have no idea if it's going to be a, hey, I'd like to sell you my house, or hey, I'd like to know where I can come burn your house down. I wouldn't, unless you're that guy, I wouldn't take the phone calls. I mean, it's so much easier on 2 fronts. 1, my schedule, and 2, the fact that I have just the stress that comes with not having to deal with not knowing what's on the other end of that phone, not having to screen people. It's such a colossal waste of my time for what I could be doing. And I'm not saying that it's a waste of your time if you're good at it and if you have the time, but for someone like me, I ain't got the time. I work like 1 hour before work, maybe in the morning, 1 or 2 hours in the afternoon after work, and then weekends. About all I got. So to be spending time returning phone calls just doesn't work. So for me, it wouldn't be possible at all without it. And I'll tell you this, I'm probably going to hire an acquisitions manager once I move back. I've been, procrastinating on watching a video Ryan did about hiring acquisition managers for like a week and a half now. He keeps starting it and then getting sidetracked, but I'm going to watch it, and I plan to hire one when I move back so that I can walk through and build that out. I still don't think that that person will be taking all those phone calls with me because I want to scale the volume. And it's so much easier to just be like, and then, hey, here's the product, go get it, or I'll go get it, than it is to take phone calls. There's so
No,
much more
that's
productive stuff you can do.
huge. So I think a lot of people think that I was like, I can make money running a call center. You've never ran a call center if you think that's where most of my money comes from. Call Porter started because, similar to Dave, I actually started in call centers when I was 17 years old, didn't graduate college. That was literally how I like fed myself till I was 20. And that was when I got into real estate. And the whole reason I started Call Porter was I was missing phone calls. I'm not super great when it comes to like attention to detail. So I would call a seller who just left me a voicemail and told me to never call them back, thinking it was the next one. And I was like mixing up names. So I was like, okay, look, I have to hire somebody. I then realized, well, if I only have one employee, I only have 8 to 5 coverage. What if somebody calls me at 6? I don't want to take those calls. So I hired a second person, and then I ran my mouth. And then buddies of mine were like, well, can you take my calls? Can you take my calls? We now have like 25, 30 employees in St. Louis, Missouri that only take calls for real estate investors. And I'll tell you, even if you have an acquisitions manager, the number one way to lose good employees is to make them talk to unqualified prospects. If you have somebody who's a closer and they're constantly dealing with about 33% of your calls, in my experience, are going to be your take me off the lists. And they're not always that sweet of like, please remove me, Dave. Normally it's like, we had one that came into Call Porter and the guy was like, yeah, I just want you to know, ma'am, you're a trash person. And just like hung up. It was like, bro, why you got to be that hateful? Right. So I fully agree with you there. Andrew asks, other than the realtor who's helping you, who else is a key player for you? Anyone meet? I'm assuming Shorts is sellers face-to-face.
Yeah, my real estate agent meets them all face to face for me for the time being because it was what I had to work with. I will be meeting people face to face for a little while until I get the right acquisitions guy up and running. The sales side and the meeting people side of the business is actually something I enjoy. And I was a recruiter for the Marine Corps for 3 years. So not only have I got a growing disdain for unqualified people on the phone because I got 3 years of practice with that. And honestly, people calling in about houses they don't want to sell you are much nicer than people calling in about their kid not going in the Marine Corps. But I really did enjoy
it's going to be just like Call of Duty, bro. I swear.
Yeah, exactly. But I really did enjoy the face-to-face sitting down and talking to applicants. So that piece of the sales process, I enjoy. I'm a people person, so I'll probably do that for a while as I'm training out my acquisitions manager. As far as other key players, outside of those systems, that's it right now, with the exception of some private lenders. And I mean, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Robert asks, would you ever door knock at addresses you've sent letters to postcards to? I'll answer and then I'll let you answer. Nah, I'm too soft. I don't enjoy conflict, or like, I'm not your like, hey, I hear the bank's going to take your house, like knock, knock, knock. Can I have it? I mean, guys, maybe that's why I don't like cold calling either. Like, I prefer more the inbound style. It's also, I think it's like not gray at all, which is why I'm a big fan of it. But I'm not door knocking. What about you, Dave?
No, I've done it once or twice in Hawaii when I was trying to do like driving for dollars, and there was just one house I was convinced was the right house, like literally falling over. And that was a very rude conversation. And so I am similar and the opposite. I don't enjoy the confrontation. Like, that's why I don't manage my own properties. I don't enjoy that side of things. But I have no problem with confrontation, which does not benefit anybody. And so I know that if I knock on the wrong door and someone says the wrong thing, I'm a little bit of a bigger individual, and B, wouldn't have a problem telling them how I felt, which doesn't really benefit my business or reputation at all, and definitely doesn't convince anyone to sell a house. So yeah, I don't need to be wasting my time doing that.
So I don't want to get hit.
Like beating my
you don't want to
chest,
hit people. I mean, I think that's a fair way to put it. Let's see here. Tim asks, I know you mentioned Ballpoint, Call Porter, and Resimply. Any other software or systems you'd consider vital before you attempt your first direct mail marketing campaign? I'm a big fan of PropStream. I use them to pull a lot of my lists. I I still pull seniors with equity through list source, but the cool thing with PropStream, it's $100 a month and you can pull up to 10,000 records. So that's $0.01 a piece. That's pretty cheap versus if you don't have like a list source hookup, they're going to charge you like 20 cents. Anything else you'd throw in? Oh, and then I also use Investor Carrot. Anything you'd throw in there?
Both of those for sure. I have Investor Carrot. I have PropStream. I would just say, and then maybe Facebook ads to retarget people, but that's not really another system. That's just something that runs in the background if they come to your website.
Very cool. Let's see here. This is a great question from Jason. Are you still doing this while active, Dave? I'm in North Carolina and let's see, EAS in a few weeks, slowly learning as much as I can in my free time. Just curious how you manage your minimal free time.
The answer is yes, but not for much longer. I'm going into the reserves later this year. At this point, I've replaced my income with the Marine Corps, but I also think I have some opportunities that I'm going to run with. So I'm taking it for that and other personal reasons. I still love the Marine Corps, so I'm probably going to do the reserves rather than just get out completely. As far as managing my free time, I wake up at 4:30 every day. I might sleep in till 6 once on the weekend. Other than that, 4:30 every day. And I go to bed at 9, 10, 11. And I basically have an hour to work on the business before I go to work. I spend my lunch breaks eating and talking on the phone in my car. And then I come home and I do really whatever it takes. Tonight, we're getting off the phone here in a little bit. And then when we're done, I've got two podcasts to record and then a whole bunch of editing to do before I go to bed. And so I try to run everything at night. And then I don't really take weekends. I force myself to take time to relax, but I basically work, I'd say probably 10 to 15 hours every weekend on my business, with the exception of like time to get groceries and maybe a dinner or two with friends, because at the end, most of those dinner or two with friends are either celebrating wins or networking.
Let's talk about real estate.
Yeah, I don't know that I've gone to dinner with somebody and it wasn't a real estate related conversation or a real estate buddy. I can't tell you the last time.
So the thing that I love about you, and I was telling my videographer this, Michael, before we hopped on, is you're like one of the most disciplined, positive people that I've ever met. And like, I think that if you look for opportunities, you're going to find them. Like I tell people all the time that are interested in marketing, interested in real estate, because I'm naturally pretty pessimistic. Like if you look at this from like, let me see how this guy's full of it. Like, or how this doesn't work. You would have got Dave's call on the guy trying to give you $4 million worth of real estate. And when he said, you don't have enough money, you would have been like, you're right, I don't. And just not done anything with it. Whereas Dave was like, let me see how I can make this work. I know personally, if I'm talking to that guy, I'm like, this dude wants $2.2 million. I don't have that. I'm not like, well, how about $100,000 down? Right? Like, you look for the opportunities there, which I love. So very, very solid there. And then, I think a lot of people have a lot more free time than you, but will say that they're too busy to do this. They're too busy to deal with sellers. They're too busy to follow up there. And a good friend of mine put it to me this way of like, you've got to be more annoyed with being where you're at than your desire to stay comfortable. Like paycheck to paycheck isn't fun. I've been there. I've been like below paycheck to paycheck where like the credit card balance is climbing every month and you're like, this shit don't look good. Right? Like I got to do something. But I've also been on the flip side of that. And what got me to the flip side of that was real estate. Was that like, I've got to find some way to make this work. And if that's you're getting up at 4:30 a.m. to put in an hour and then half an hour on a lunch break, it's doing that kind of stuff that somebody else is going to be like, I got to check my TikToks, like on their lunch break or whatever. That is the difference there. Let's see. Jorge says
TikTok content out, not consuming TikTok content.
That's totally fair. If you are, there's a big difference between producing and consuming. I shot 10 or 11 reels today. That was exhausting. I was like, by like the end of it, I feel bad for my video guy because I'm sure I was just not pleasant. I was just like, we're done. And he's like, one more time, a little happier this go. which it's good. I love people that are like, yeah, you were real boring there. Let's shoot this again. Jorge says, can you provide a brief overview of the total expenses using Call Porter and Ballpoint and what those two companies did for you?
Yeah, I feel like we kind of covered what they did for me already.
So Call Porter takes the calls. Ballpoint does the direct mail.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ballpoint is, depending on what mailer, and Ryan's going to jump in on me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's letter or postcard, 75 cents to $1.50, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, so postcards are 95 cents. Letters are like $1.50. But that goes down with volume. Yeah, you got the hookup, bro. It goes down with volume, and you can always use the code 10 off now for 10% off. So if you're like $1.50 is, too much, you might as well use that anyway, because that'll knock it down 10%.
Yeah, and then Call Porter for me is $500 a month plus another $100 for every 25 calls over that. And then PropStream, I think, is 97, and I'm missing one. Carrot. Carrot's like
Carrot just went up. Yeah, they were like 49. I think they're 69 now. But worth it.
Yeah, I mean, less than $1,000, and it runs a business that's making me more than $1,000. So, thumbs up.
I mean, that's easy math. More in than out is, you can't go broke if you're making a profit, right? Aaron asks who you use for skip tracing.
I just run everything through PropStream.
Interesting.
I'm sure there's probably a better way to do it, but
I use Skip Genie for everything. I just find their data is the best. I also like being able to do more like one-off stuff, but that's good to know. I think you're actually the first person I've met that actually uses their skip tracing. So,
well, I mean, it worked for me. So,
I mean, yeah, you can't be upset about it. It worked.
Maybe I'll try Skip Genie though, and see if they don't land me 80 doors and 40 grand, then they're garbage. I'll call them and I'll tell them they're trash persons.
Your expectations might be a little skewed, right? Like, I did a post the other day about like, what was your first check? What did that feel like? And this guy was like, I made like 200K. And I was like, wow. He's like, haven't hit it since. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like it's a great intro, but might have skewed your expectations of what this should look like. All right. I've got 3 more and then we'll call this good. So Dave asks, what hesitations did you have before you dove into real estate investing? How did you overcome them?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask this question. So my first deal was a house hack, which I think I advocate that anybody jump into a house hack as if they're thinking about real estate. And there's a lot of reasons. I'm not going to waste time answering all of them. One of those reasons is that when we grow up in America, we are told like the American dream involves a house and you own a house. So psychologically, buying a real estate investment is not nearly as easy as buying a real estate house. Like you live in a house. So a house hack's great because you live in the house. It's your house. Everybody loves when you buy a house. So nobody tried to talk me out of buying a house, but they probably would have talked me out of buying a real estate investment. So I think that's one reason I like the house hack. The other thing is I'm like the jump out of an airplane, somebody throw me a parachute type of person with my life, which just bites me in the rear a lot, but I catch my parachute more often than not. So hesitation is usually the opposite of my problem. I usually jump into things I shouldn't have and need somebody to say, you should hesitate a little bit. And so wrong person to ask here. I was
going to say, I think they beat inaction out of you at boot camp in the Marines.
Military is definitely, that's one of the things that I think military does well for investors is make decisive people.
Yeah, no, it's huge. I'm similar to Dave, honestly, in that I am very much I'm just going to try this. My first deal I ever got came from wholesaling, which I heard about through like kind of sketchy connections that did bandit signs. I found Bigger Pockets. I found a guy who would sell me yellow letters that I still had to hand insert and lick myself for about what we charge for Ballpoint, by the way. So you guys are welcome. I licked a lot of envelopes. And then I found you could get like Staples had like the little sealer rolls, and that was significantly better.
Game over.
Yeah. But I spent $3,000 with a buddy of mine. I put my half on a credit card that I couldn't pay off. And it was totally like I hope this works. And, you know, off of that, we made $12,500. So after we paid for our marketing, that's right about $10,000 net. So similar, I'm kind of a, like you mentioned, you know, I bought a hotel. I know nothing about a hotel. I'm buying an Airbnb. I know nothing about an Airbnb, but I'm like, why not? Right?
Yeah,
like,
there's no better way to learn.
That's fair. All right, got two more, and it looks like these are primarily for me. Akeem, I saw you mentioned Really Flow. Do you still use them? Great question. I do. I use them for their artificial intelligence data. So it's more expensive. And this is one of those things that, like, you don't play with this when you're just starting out. This is when, like, you're trying to get to 7 figures plus a year. They are, I want to say it's $1,000 or $1,500 a month for their data that tells you based off of like 800 data points who's likely to sell. You can also buy it per zip code for like $75. But that's one of those lists that I mail every month. They have a competitor called Chris Richter who sells something called like Authentic or the Richter list. It's like a competitor to that, of kind of that like 10 to 15,000 bucks a year for data. John Hauer, last question here. How many inbound calls does 500 cover with Call Porter? Bro, I'm gonna level with you. I'm like Dave here with the financials of the hotel. I own Call Porter, but I haven't done sales for a while. Our website's actually getting redone right now, and our new minimum plan is only $249 a month. So it's actually cheaper than it used to be online. The plan Dave is on is one that no longer exists, but they've got different tiers at Call Porter based off like talk time and what volume looks like. Best thing to do is to go to their website and schedule a demo, or email sales@callporter.com with like specifics. If you know your call volume, you can say, hey, here's what I'm at, and they can give you more of like an accurate quote on that. Guys, I want to thank you all for
dinosaur.
Do what?
So that was the nicest way I've ever been called a dinosaur.
I mean, you got a good mustache. I need to clean mine up. It's in my mouth, which is like my biggest pet peeve.
Flavor saver.
Yeah. Oh gosh. On that note, I appreciate you guys all coming to hang out with us. If you found this helpful, enjoyable, Dave and I are both trying to grow our YouTube channels as well as our Instagram profiles. So feel free to hit us up on there. Mine is Ryan C. Dossey everywhere, and David's is From Military to Millionaire. You can find him on YouTube as well as on social media like that. I will tell you, with Dave, there's people that you meet that you're just like, this dude's legit. And that's really how it was for me. I was like, my video guy this was like his test project. I was like, we're going to go up to like north of San Diego and interview some dude that I met off the internet. Hopefully he doesn't hurt us. And we just really clicked. So if you're looking for like somebody who's actually out there doing this thing, other than myself, highly recommend that you hit up and follow Dave. I appreciate you guys coming on to hang out with us, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, man. Thanks for showing up.